Well, thank you all. That's a very big introduction to live up to. We'll see what we can do.
Pressure's on, Kurt.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Right, the pressure's on. What I'm going to attempt to do is I try to figure out what would be the best thing to do. And what I'm going to attempt to do is to compress a 3-day training into about 3 hours. So this is going to be pretty compressed, or at least I'll jump over things. There are certain aspects of it, like kinesiologic testing and how to do it, and getting good at doing it, because it's an integral part of what it is that I do and what I train people in doing, because it's a real key to being able to get inside and find out something about the truth of what's going on inside us. We avoid, deny, and distort the truth in a million different ways. It is just part of what we are as human beings. And being able to cut to the chase and get to what the real problem is and why it is that we're responding the way we are and how to get rid of it is a key element in the whole process of what we do with attractor field therapy. And attractor field therapy and attractor field techniques really have two different aspects to them. There is one aspect that has to do with emotional things, and the other aspect that has to do with physical things, and they're integrally related, because the body doesn't lie. The body is a mirror. It's a slow mirror, I call it, of the mind. Right? Your body will ultimately become open to different kinds of illness in relationship to how you think. Do you ever wonder why it is that you get sick? I mean, we are told many things by science. We are told that it is viruses, all right? You get sick because of viruses. Well, and certainly viruses have something to do with why you may get a cold. But the question is not just why it is that that particular organism might bother you, but why is it that it doesn't bother everyone? And it's a very big question. Why is it that only some people get ill? In the biggest epidemics that the world has seen, with the flu or the bubonic plague, only a percentage of the world got sick, and the rest of them didn't, even though they were living in the same kind of conditions. As the question comes down to, well, why is it that this group got sick and this group didn't get sick? Why in particular does illness seem to occur? We can say maybe they're blessed by God. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they have good genes. Could be something of that nature. We just don't know exactly what it is. We know recently in the field of psychoimmunology that we identify stress as being the big cause for many things. And we talk about stress as if stress is something that you can get a cup of in a store, or you can find it lying on a street corner, like it's a real thing of some sort. And stress is not a real thing that is a separate identifiable object. Stress is our reaction to things, our own personal reaction. And in the same event, each one of us will have a different personal reaction. It's our stress. So stress is something that actually we create inside ourselves. It's part of our habitual response. What one person finds stressful, a divorce could be a very stressful event, but it leaves some people dancing in the streets. You've got to stand back from it. So the same event can have two entirely different reactions with people, and there's nothing in the event that makes it so that it has to be a particular way. It is our appraisal. Reality is truly a subjective experience, and it is our appraisal of what's going on out there that causes us or creates within us different kinds of reactions of different sorts. And as we let go of different ways of viewing things, we are able to reach the internal state called peace. That's a big thing that people want to get to. Well, it turns out peace does exist in each one of us, but we've got all these internal barriers to it. And Hawkins has stated, David Hawkins has stated that peace is what exists when the blocks to it are removed. All right? And we put the blocks in there, and we do that on the basis of our thoughts. And our thoughts come out of our values and our beliefs. And our values and beliefs are things that we acquire across time. They are our reactions, again, to different kinds of things as we're growing up. My field, I'm a neuropsychologist, and a clinical psychologist. A neuropsychologist is a person whose specialty within the field of psychology is brain and behavior, brain functioning and behavior functioning. And it has led me to have a slightly different conception of what's going on with regard to meridian functioning and how illness occurs in the body and how to deal with it, which has ultimately resulted in this entity we call attractor field therapy or attractor field techniques. From everything that I can gather, and I've done quite a bit of research, the preeminent system within the body, the system which controls the circulatory system and the lymphatic system, the musculoskeletal system, the nervous system, as it turns out, is the meridian system that the Chinese have discovered, or whoever channeled that several thousand years ago. And I say channeled that simply because the earliest records we find having to do with acupuncture show the same meridian charts that we now see full-blown. So somebody received that as a block of information, and we've been working with it ever since, trying to figure out what to do with it. There have been some very interesting pieces of research recently that have very well and very nicely demonstrated that the acupuncture system is a lot more than we thought that it was, viewing things from traditional Chinese medicine. Within the field of traditional Chinese medicine, it is considered, it is certainly a mind-body system, and we know that how you think and how you operate is very important within the Chinese system. But when working with qi, it is something that is done on a local organ system. It is an organ-centered model of how to deal with it. And recent research that has been done that has examined the relationship of the meridian flows to the nervous system indicate that every acupuncture point that you stimulate, you're actually stimulating a discrete part of the brain as well. That when you stimulate a meridian point, you actually light up a part of the brain. And that's a very important thing, because by lighting up the part of the brain, what you're doing is you're activating it, and it, at that point in time, generates energy. It's energy that not only influences the nervous system, but also influences our thoughts in lots of different ways. Another researcher has studied the meridian system itself, starting from embryonic development. And his work indicates that the first thing that happens when the little ball of cells, it's called the blastula, which is the earliest phase of development of the cell, before there's any differentiation, before it starts to turn into an embryo, the first thing that happens is a little energy point appears. The thing that we now call Heaven's Gate, which is right on the top of your head. That's the first acupuncture point. And then after that, there are these other energy points that appear, and as they appear, this blastula elongates and it stretches out, and then suddenly it develops arm buds and everything else. And it looks like the thing that is in control of the development of the embryo is actually the acupuncture system itself, this energetic system that sits behind things. The second, so the acupuncture system seems to be able to influence the physical body at the most elementary of levels. Another researcher, fellow who in 1991 or 2 received the Nobel Prize, a fellow by the name of Eric Kandel, who was a psychiatrist who went back because he wasn't satisfied in understanding psychiatry. He wanted to find out more of the physical aspects of what was going on inside the brain. He discovered that whenever we form memories and go through the process of thinking, we're actually going through a process that changes the brain. The brain is something that is called plastic. For many years we thought that the brain was fixed. You had a brain injury, there was no hope for it. Well, what we've learned is that the brain actually changes and grows on the basis of what you learn and what you think. And by repeatedly running different circuits in your brain, you can strengthen those circuits and you grow new nerve cells, and you'll actually change the brain itself. What was more remarkable in his studies was the fact that he found out that thoughts turn genes on and off. Oh. Now, when someone talked earlier today about an event that occurred in their historical lifetime that changed something that happened in the genes. Well, how does that happen? Happens by the energy of the thoughts and the emotion that seems to go on. And those same energies we find are the same things that open our body to illness. As it turns out, we are the key, and our thoughts are the key to why it is that we become ill. We ourselves do it to ourselves. It's an inadvertent byproduct of how we think. My work has followed a couple of momentous works that preceded it. I was in the process of going through the Course in Miracles for the third time when I ran across David Hawkins' work. And I read his book, and all of a sudden the universe changed. And it opened a door that really allowed me to understand what was going on inside us, and then from that, how it is that we can go about the process of actually changing it. As a result of that interaction and the synergy between those two particular works, The Power versus Force and The Course in Miracles, Attractor field therapy was born. And I started in 1998, in January of 1998. By April of 1998, I had the first website up with perhaps 100 different formulas or so at that point in time for different kinds of physical problems. It's grown to about 500 or 600 formulas at this time. I only have about 200, 250 of them out on the internet. One of the things that I have learned is if you put too much out there, it becomes so unbelievable for people that they don't even look at it. It doesn't seem like it is at all possible. As it turns out, it is possible. And as a secondary derivative of the tapping techniques, I along with Regina, who became tired of tapping, I got tired of tapping, so there's got to be an easier way of dealing with this. It is a stimulation, and I worked on how it could be that we could influence the meridians in a different way. And one of the ways that we can do it is with light. Another way we can do it is with electrical energy of different sorts, electromagnetic energy. And a third way that we can do it has to do with the generation of some very special kind of energy waves that we were able to generate through the use of this little antenna device that I have sitting on the side of my computer. This is a big one that will generate an energy field in excess of 400 feet. Right? The little ones that I sell for people generate a field that's about 40 foot in radius, so it's 80 feet in diameter. So it's a big field. You get one, you cover your whole house is basically what it is. You put it in there, and that's what I wanted, was something that would work that way. And basically what we have done is we have isolated the specific frequencies that stimulate each of the meridian points that we use as part of attractor field therapy. There are 24 meridian points that are used in the tapping sequences. For the CDs, there are actually 30 tones that we use, a little bit different, some points that are not quite so easily accessible as the tapping points that we recommend for the website. And it enhances the effectiveness of some of the formulas pretty dramatically, which is why we added in at that particular level. Pardon? Want me to up the volume a little bit? I can try. I can only show you.
Yeah, that's not working.
This is not working? Oh, it only works for him. I'm sorry about that. My apologies. I'll try and speak louder.
A little bit slower.
All right.
That's women for you. Play.
Yep. Pardon? Right. Right. Well, that's all right. I'll try and speak up. All right. Before I go into a demonstration of some of this stuff, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the additional research that I've done, because not only have I isolated the frequencies that work for human beings, but also there are separate frequencies that work for mammals, non-human mammals, and different frequencies that work for birds, and different frequencies that work for reptiles and for plants and all kinds of things. And it certainly seems that this energy flow is not only in people, but it's in all living entities. As a matter of fact, we can influence insects. We've got a mosquito begone stuff that really works and drives mosquitoes away for about a whole block, and you just don't think. But that's sort of a secondary level. I have not researched every aspect of attractor field therapy, and certainly not as extensively as it could be researched, and is being researched in different places in the world at this point in time. From the feedback that we've gotten, attractor field therapy is used in all 50 states and about 40 countries outside the United States at this point in time. It has never been advertised. It is only just offered for free on the internet, and people have found it, it works, and they spread it and they use it. And that I'm here to just open your eyes to the fact that it is there, and all of these various formulas for physical illness are available quite readily and easily through the internet for tapping. And as I say, it's all free. I did bring a couple of copies. I'll just pass it on and let you take a look at it. This is a copy of what you can, it's got coffee stain on it, but it'll work. You can download from the internet.
Is the web address on it?
Yeah, the web address is www.the tree, oh, it's the dash, tree dash of dash life, life, life.com. So it's the tree of life with dashes in there.com.
It's also on the back of my brochure. It's the first website. I mean, everybody got my brochure. Oh.
Okay, so it is, all right, so on Regina's. .com, yes. Yeah. Yeah, the .org was gone when I got there. The treeoflife.org was gone when I got there. So the only thing I could do was put dashes in and then go with the .com, and that worked fine. Now, as I said, one of the things that I do is I tend to do proof of concept. I wanted to verify the effectiveness of the antenna system before I started using it with people. So I did a series of studies with animals, and the animal studies are really kind of interesting. So I'm going to jump into those for a moment. And what I worked with were hogs. I worked with pigs. Why did I work with pigs? Because pigs are very similar to people on a lot of levels, and they're working on organ transplants and things of that nature from pigs into people. And the only problem with pigs is that they're pretty smelly beasts, and the thought of tapping a pig was not one thing that was particularly desirable to me. And the thought of tapping enough pigs to be able to get a good research study done was something that was absolutely something that I didn't want to do. So they were natural to use the antennas, and I used an antenna with them that I guess it worked on about a 600-foot radius to cover the entire hog farm. And at each trial that we did, we studied a total of 40,000 pigs. And with any luck, this will show up. There. All right. Yes, we used what's called a treated versus historical design. We took 2 years worth of grow-outs on the farm, which was about 20,000 pigs, and we looked at the growth statistics during that particular period of time, how fast they grew, how much food they ate, how long it took for them to grow from a little 50-pound piglet into a 250-pound pig that goes to market. So those are the kind of parameters that we were looking at. And typically, there are very, very small changes that go on. You might find a variation of maybe 0.5% at most between one growth cycle and another growth cycle. They're pretty standard. You know, the genetic line is the same, and they use the same feed, and so you get a very, very uniform crop. And as we mentioned here, we studied 40,000 pigs over a 2-year period. And these are the kind of results that we came up with. That the purple represents the treated pigs, which we studied in 2001 and 2002 versus 98 and 99. And there was a rather significant difference there, that is significant at the 0.01 level of significance, that the treated pigs were growing quite a bit faster. They grew 13% faster. They got to market 13% faster. And on a daily basis, they gained 1.85 pounds versus 1.56. So
From the pig's perspective, that might not be a good thing.
Well, you might think that. I don't know. I haven't talked to too many pigs recently, so I'm really not so sure of that, but I can understand that. And there is an interesting thing. In addition to looking at those particular parameters, there's some very funny aspects of the pigs that were affected, because we went after not only some of the physical things, but we went after some emotional things that go along with pigs also. Pigs do have emotions. Okay? They're animals. And among themselves, pigs tend to be pretty nasty creatures. They bite each other. They're vile to one another, as a matter of fact. They're pigs, and they want food, and somebody's in their way. They gore them to get them out, so they have to cut off their tusks to make sure they don't gore one another. And even without tusks, they'll bite off each other's tails or rip off each other's ears and things of that nature. They're very aggressive, like a wild boar is out in the field. We wanted to see if there was something we could do to alter that aggressive nature of the pigs. And second, pigs in relationship to people, they're terrified of people. When you open up the pig barn to go in there, the pigs typically flee. They scream in terror and run to the back of their barns and climb on top of one another, and some will actually die as a result of the others climbing on top of them. It's a total panic reaction that they have. We wanted to see if there's something that we could do to change that particular panic reaction. And we were very successful at doing that as well, as I will point out, and I'll talk about that. Yes?
Where do they calibrate them out of consciousness in general?
Pigs, I never calibrated them.
The dog did. It's,
Right. Pardon?
I don't remember. Dog had with Hawkins.
Hawkins?
Yeah, with birds and pig and all that kind of.
Right. Yeah. No, I've never.
I wonder how this affected their calibration. You have their growth, but okay.
Right. I was less interested at that point in time because it's basically an irrelevant parameter for the world. It is of interest, a heuristic interest for you and I, but in practical sense, nobody's going to care what the pig calibrates is basically what it is. They want to know if it grows faster, or if it's going to, from a commercial standpoint, or if it takes less food to grow a pig, etc. And that was one of the next things. As I said, we measured a number of parameters, and we take a look at that particular thing. What we found was that not only could we get them to grow 13% faster, but in the same time frame, they ate 7.5% less. So we were able to affect their physiology. These were proof of concept studies that I wanted to run. My ultimate goal was to be able to develop formulas that could assist with human weight control by reversing this particular process. So we have done that very successfully, by the way. All right. Yeah. Whoops. Oh, in terms of time to grow out. They were 13% faster, and they gained 13% more weight. They grew 13% faster, and they ate 7.5% less. All right. So that was the result of our 40,000 pigs that we studied. In terms of the emotional stuff, what we found was that typically after about a day of playing the CD, and the farmer used a little Radio Shack standard-sized portable CD player to do all of this with. All right? It's not like these are tremendously powerful energies that have to be created. And he used an antenna similar to this little thing, just plugged into the side and the earphone jack. After about a day of playing it, the pigs no longer flee when you open up the gate. They take a step back, they look at you, and from what this farmer said, they would walk up to be petted. He said it was just a very dramatic and a very unusual kind of event. After that same day, all of the aggressiveness stopped. They don't do any of the biting, any of the grunting, any of the goring, any of the things that they normally do.
When are you putting it in the prisons?
Pardon?
When are you putting it in the prisons?
That'll take its own time. That'll take its own time. Now, the interesting thing is that the same formulas that work on animals, I use the anxiety formulas for people on the animals, and to calm down their anxiety. These energies are universal energies. It's something that Hawkins talks about, that the energy of grief is the energy of grief, and it doesn't matter if you're a frog or you're a rabbit or you're a person. The energy of grief is the energy of grief, and the formulas that we have work on those particular energies, and that's again something we'll get into a little bit later. But it is the same energy field that we affect with an animal that we affect when we're working with people. And exactly the same formulas work. So if you want to take those formulas that are on the internet and use them on your animals, they do work. And I developed CDs for animals as well that contain the physical formulas as well as the formulas that deal with consciousness and the belief change, things of that nature, which again are stuff that we're going to run into a little bit later today. Now, not only did I work on hogs, but I worked on chickens. I had an independent study done at the University of Arkansas. That's UARK at the top, and it was an accelerated growth protocol is what they called it. So it's a UARK AGP study, and we commissioned the University of Arkansas to do controlled studies, and then also to compare these controls to historical controls. Now, the green here are the historical controls, and the red, the blue are the treated and the control groups. And we knew we were going to run into some problems with this because of the size of the energy field that we create. We can't create just a little tiny energy field. About the smallest energy field I can get is a 40-foot one. But what we found out was that the birds are a lot more sensitive to these energies than people are. And with birds, what works at 40 feet for people works at 250 feet for chickens. And they didn't have a large enough room that we could have a controlled study and have the chickens contained in the same room. We tried several different designs, and eventually we were able. They had one a newly developed barn, which I'll jump to here. And this was our third study with them. Again, typically the difference between one crop and another crop of chickens is no more than about 5 grams. And that's a pretty big difference. As a matter of fact, we were told that if we could get a method of growing chickens that would constantly give them 5 grams, they would go wild over it. What we were able to do was to develop a system that increased the growth rate for the treated and the control group, and again the problem was that the control group was still within the energy field that we generate, and it wasn't really a truly control group. It was far enough away from the antenna that it got a diminished effect, but it was still affected very clearly, because this is what the historical design is, and this is what we got with our control group. Overall, these results are significant at the 0.0001 level of significance. They're very highly significant kind of results. The basic bottom line is that we can grow chickens and hogs, is what we figured out at this point in time, a whole lot faster. They eat a lot less. They get to market faster, which is going to have, at some point, some commercial value. I have done one study with people looking at arthritis. And it was a small study. We only had 7 people, and again it was using their own ratings over a period of about 5 weeks prior to them starting the project, and comparing their pain levels prior to treatment versus after treatment. And what we got after a 5-week treatment period of people just playing the CD, a drop of 30% in the pain that they experienced during that particular period of time. I will point out that this study was done in 2002, and since then we have made some improvements in the CDs that increase their effectiveness pretty dramatically. It's something we found that was also true with regard to the tapping formulas, that if you increase the number of times that you tap, and there's a very specific way that you have to do it, it increases the effectiveness of the formula very, very dramatically. Yeah.
Is this considered like an acoustic sound wave?
No, it is not an acoustic sound wave. It starts off being an acoustic sound wave, but the antenna converts it into something else.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It is really a probability wave that is generated, which you probably never heard of, because, well, that's a, yeah. So you can influence basically the probability of how material things turn up, which is kind of interesting and very nice. Now, I'm going to jump to something else entirely, which isn't part of our research, but is an important kind of thing. We've been talking, and we've talked about the power of words, and all of you have heard that words are powerful. All right? Well, what kind of effect do they have on the material world? This is a study done by a Japanese fellow, Emoto. He's written a book called Water Wellness, and these are photographs of his that he had on his website for quite a period of time, and so I've just transferred them and put them in the slides. And what he's done is he's taken water under various kinds of conditions and looked at just what it looks like if you take an ice crystal. Normally you think ice crystals are like a snow crystal, and they're all unique in a certain way, but if you look at snow crystals, they're all pretty beautiful. Watch what happens. All right? This was pure Antarctic ice where there's no pollution. There's a picture of water taken from a sacred fountain. There was water taken from a polluted lake in Japan. And if you take a look at the difference between Arctic ice and the polluted lake, you say, oh, that's not too good, that water. Here's another interesting one. This was another polluted site in Japan, and you can see that that's pretty ugly looking ice crystal. And then here is the same water after a half an hour Buddhist prayer was said over the water. Right? So there's the before and the after on that. Now, we also wanted to take a look at the effect of other kinds of physical things on the environment, and so we looked at the effect of music. And this is what water looks like, distilled water, after we've played Bach. Right? Whoops. And Beethoven. And heavy metal. All right. Now, the next thing he did was he took distilled water, and this is what distilled water looks like, and he wanted to see what the effect of words was. And so I started off saying, we're going to take a look at what words do to the physical universe. This was the words Mother Teresa, typed out and printed and stuck on a bottle of water overnight, and then he took the water and crystallized it, and so it went from this to looking like that. So he put the words Adolf Hitler on a bottle. Then he took the words I love you. And the great magic words, thank you. And finally he took a series of words, you make me sick, I want to kill you. So if you ever doubt the effect of words at the lowest level biochemically of what's going on, they do have a rather profound effect on things. Now, it's interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, you asked about what's the calibrated level. And it's difficult on some levels to determine the effect of what it means when we calibrate something. And I got that when I was together with Hawkins in June, and I asked him about the water in the Ganges, because the water in the Ganges calibrates above 500. What I asked him was, would you drink it? Not a chance. Dead bodies who float in that thing. It is one of the most polluted rivers that goes along in the world. The water crystals in there might be very good, but the other stuff that's in there, you don't really want. Right? So just because something calibrates high does not necessarily mean that it is safe or good for you. Yeah, isn't that interesting? All right. So yes.
It was also interesting how all the higher vibration crystals had the Star of David pattern.
Yes, which is an interesting kind of thing, and it's not anything I would go into at this particular level, but what we found is that this work and the energetics that are involved are heavily, and beliefs that lead us to enlightenment are spread among various religions, and within the Jewish faith, especially through Kabbalah, there are the largest number of a single number of beliefs that lead to enlightenment, which is kind of an interesting thing. But that's an entirely separate kind of thing. Now, oh, I've got another little picture here. I'm going to show it. There's a cute little dog, all right? It's my brother's dog. And the reason I put him in there was I was speaking to my brother last night, and he lives in Wisconsin, and he was mentioning that they were having thunderstorms. And his little dog, Gizmo, typically is terrified of thunderstorms. And he mentioned that about a half an hour before he knows, my brother knows, that a thunderstorm is coming, his dog will come up and start quivering and be all upset. He can pick up the vibration, he picks up the energy or the thunder, he hears it, whatever it is, about a half an hour before my brother does. And he said that he came in and started squirming and going through his normal thing. And so my brother put on the animal CD. The animal CD that I've developed has frequencies on there to get rid of the aggressiveness in animals and the anxiety in animals, just like the pigs, and also allergic responses, because dogs and cats have an awful lot of allergic skin and eye kind of responses, and arthritis, which is one of the biggest problems that they, especially as they age. And so he put on the animal CD, and he said about 10 minutes, Gizmo made a turnaround, came out, lay down on the kitchen floor, rolled over on his back, put his legs up, and stayed that way through the entire thunderstorm. My brother was pretty impressed. All right. Now, I keep mentioning David Hawkins. For those of you who are familiar with power versus force, this is the map of consciousness that Dr. Hawkins has developed. And it's a very important document and map because in the field of psychology and in medicine, one of the hardest problems that we have had has been to try and figure out a method of categorizing emotionality or relating emotionality to physical illness. The instruments that we typically have available that allow us to measure emotionality are not appropriately drawn because we don't seem to get very good correlations between one kind of physical disorder and what we find on our psychometric instruments, our tests. It is a very unfortunate kind of thing. And with Dr. Hawkins' map, one of the things that I've been able to do is to correlate just about every known physical illness with a specific level of consciousness. Each level of consciousness has certain disorders that go with that level of consciousness and don't go with any other level of consciousness. That's a really remarkable kind of thing to find. What we have found is that no physical illness seems to occur below the 200 level. This is the level of truth. This is the level where you really get free of being a victim. And everything else, every one of the other ways of looking at things, from pride or anger or desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, or shame, each one of these ways of looking at the world actually opens us up to different kinds of physical disorders. And they're very, very specific. We haven't found any kind of specific underlying logic that goes on with it, not anything that you would look at and say, oh yes, this metaphor describes it. What it seems to be is that the lower the level of consciousness, the disorders that we acquire impact our sense of well-being more. So the lower you go on the level of consciousness, the disorders that you pick up are nastier disorders. You feel worse having those disorders. Your sense of well-being is more disrupted at those disorders. And I'm going to go through for a moment and talk about some of those things. And then we're going to go into another aspect, but I figure I'll stay on the physical for a little while. I'm just going to give you a little partial listing of some of the things that we found that are related to the lowest level of consciousness, that is the level of despising. And what is it to despise? If you despise someone, what is it? Well, you don't like them, that's part of it. That's right, that's certainly part of it. Anyone else? Pardon? Disgust? Yeah, you can have a feeling of disgust toward them.
Did you ask about spice?
Despising. Yes, yes. No, despising, as it turns out, the core element is despising is to view someone as deliberately hurtful. They're mean, they're cruel. They do not nice things. And that's really the essence of somebody that you despise or we find despicable, despicable behavior. And at that level where we find people in the world as despicable, we also tend to experience the world as pretty miserable. And the kind of disorders that we find that occur down there are arrhythmias. And if you've ever had an arrhythmia, it is not something you feel very good when you have one. We also find asthma sits down at that particular level. And you say, when I first saw that, I said, gee, well, that's not such a bad thing. I've never had asthma, and everyone that I ever met who had asthma was pretty well controlled using inhalers. However, if you don't have an inhaler, you think you're going to die. It is one of the most terrible disorders that you can possibly imagine. It sits right next to emphysema, or might even be worse than emphysema because of the attacks that come on. And I will give you an example of a woman who was referred to me by an acupuncturist whose specialty is dealing with allergic reactions, and she had a patient who had an allergic asthmatic reaction. She was a 74-year-old, very devout Orthodox Jewish woman. And I was interested, I took the case on because allergies in the attractor field system occur at the 75 level, at the level of grief. And asthma occurs at the 20 level. So I wanted to see what this disorder was that this woman had that was somehow a mix of the two. And she came in, and most assuredly she did have asthma. She was wheezing very badly as she came in. They asked her to exhale, and she would go, and you'd hear this loud, noise that came out of her. It was very clearly an asthmatic kind of squeal that came out. And I found myself within 5 minutes asking her who in her life she despised. Which not a usual thing that you ask a 74-year-old devout Orthodox Jew. And she was very good, and she sat and pondered and thought about it. She said, absolutely no one that I can think of that I despise. I said, well, is there something in the world that bothers you? And she thought about 5 seconds and said, well, only the murder bombers in Israel. And I went, oh, the murder bombers in Israel, just the choice of her words. That was a pretty clear indication that she had a lot of emotionality associated with that. So I started talking to her about the murder bombers in Israel, and within 5 minutes she had a full-blown asthmatic attack in my office. Was wheezing and just, she was gasping for air. She reached for her puffer, and I said, no, let me tap you. So I bravely got up and had her stand up, and I tapped her with the asthma formula that we had, and nothing happened. I went, oh. I tapped her a second time. Nothing happened. I stood back from, I said, what did I do wrong? I tapped her for despising. It left just like that. I got the cue because as I was finishing tapping her for the second time and nothing happened, she stopped and she said, "Well, I still am thinking about those people." She was actively generating the energy that was keeping the thing going. So we can do that. We can generate the energy that is strong enough to actually hold that particular entity, that physical problem, in place all by itself. Once I tap that, it's gone. Now, I've been working with her on and off for about a year. I would say she went from using her puffer 3 or 4 times a day down to perhaps once a week she uses it at this point in time. She no longer sees the Palestinians as despicable people. She has moved up and now sees the people who control the Palestinians as despicable people. But since she isn't confronted with them a whole lot, she does not generate as much of that particular energy. There are other aspects of it, though. It is a way of looking at the world. You know, she lives at that particular level, yes.
What about people who are extremely sensitive to other people's energies? Can they pick up the...
It's very interesting that you would bring that up, because what we found is that people who are sensitive to other people's energy are feeling their own energy. And they're yes. How do you like that? Yeah, we've done some pretty very interesting studies that have been done on that particular.
Like when you walk into a casino and you feel the whole avalanche, how many of you can feel it? Okay?
You feel something. There's absolutely no question that you're feeling something. Right? There was a wonderful study that was done. Again, I'm jumping over big pieces of things, and there's a chunk of research that has to do with how we discovered that the discrete parts of the brain are stimulated when you stimulate particular acupuncture points. That work has led to a whole field of studies in brain functioning. The technique is called the fMRI, the functional MRI. It is an MRI that when you use it on the brain allows you to see which parts of the brain are lighting up. And we did these wonderful series of studies on pain, looking at people's pain and feeling someone else's pain, which is this sensitivity that you're talking about to the world's energy. And what they did was they took people and they gave them mild electric shocks, enough so that they would feel a mild pain. And they ran the fMRI while they were doing this and took note of exactly which sections of the brain became activated when you created pain. Then they took these same subjects and had them watch somebody else who was being shocked. And these people were empathetic toward the person who was being shocked. You know what part of their brain came on? The same part of the brain that came on when they were shocked. So when we think we're feeling someone else's feeling, we're feeling our own feeling. Whatever.
That part of us that has had that feeling.
That's right. That's right. So whatever it is that you're overwhelmed as you walk into something, that's activated by that stuff out there, but it's your feeling. Reality is truly a subjective experience. We think we're feeling their feelings. We're feeling our own feelings. That's right. Everything is a mirror of ourselves. And so when we go out there and something overwhelms us, it is your feeling that is being brought up wherever it was that that you originated that feeling. That's something you'd have to investigate and find out. But you are activating your own feeling. It is not that we are feeling the energy of others. You know, we feel our own feelings. Reality is subjective experience, and which is neither good nor bad. It is just the way it is. Right? Now, one of the interesting things we found is that all of the venereal diseases are disorders that come at that 20 level, at the level of shame. Why that is, it's hard to say. I'm sorry. We found that all of the venereal diseases, that is gonorrhea and syphilis and chlamydia, all genital herpes, these all fall at the 20 level, all fall at the level of shame. We did some separate calibrations on that, looking at the Christian scriptures, and one of the things that we found was that all of the things that are listed as 10 commandments are all 20 and 30 level behaviors, including adultery, having sexual relationships outside of wedlock and things of that nature. And it turns out the consequences of those things turn out there. HIV is a 20 level disorder. All right. For For whatever reason, leprosy is a 20-level disorder. It was something that people shunned lepers, you know, for thousands of years, and there's a reason why. There are a number of other, I'll jump from the 20 level up to the 30 level, which is the level of guilt. We find interesting things turn up at the level of guilt. Things like Crohn's disease, which is an intestinal disorder. Diabetes turns out to be a 30-level disorder, both type 1 and type 2. Influenza, the flu, turns out to be a 30-level disorder. I guess phlebitis, whether it's either deep vein phlebitis or superficial phlebitis, are 30-level disorders. These things are tied up with feelings of vindictiveness. The thought that, and vindictiveness is an interesting kind of thing. Vindictiveness is all about paybacks of some sort. And even the concept that what goes around comes around turns out to be a vindictive kind of thought. All right? That's a very common thing that many people say that, oh yeah, what goes around comes around. But the whole idea that sits behind it is there's going to be a payback for what you've done. And that turns out to be something that generating those thoughts, thinking those particular kinds of things, actually physically impact our body, just as the stuff with water. All right? Now, at the level of apathy, we find other interesting kinds of disorders, like cardiomyopathy, which is a dying heart. Well, apathy is the level of hopelessness, where people have given up. And so what we find is some pretty nasty disorders are in there. A lot of congenital disorders fall at that particular level, and all of the congenital disorders appear to be karmic in origin. We bring certain energies with us that play out in this particular lifetime, but they play out within a level of consciousness. Found that contusions, that is bruises, are something that turn up at that 50 level. And I have an interesting anecdote on that one because I bruised myself a while ago. It was a unique and an interesting experience for me. I was helping a friend paint their house, and they had a very tall lamppost, and they asked me if I would paint the lamppost. So I was trying to paint the lamppost, and he didn't have a ladder, so I couldn't get on a ladder. I could barely reach the top of the lamppost, and I had a big brass ball on the top, and I was trying to get it off, and I couldn't get it off, and I got a pair of pliers, and I'm playing around with this pair of pliers, I must have spent 10 or 15 minutes, and I was getting pretty hopeless. I didn't think this thing was going to come off at all. I was getting very, very discouraged. And so I started thinking these very discouraged thoughts. My hand slipped, and I grabbed my finger with a pair of pliers. Slipped off. This was not a pleasant thing to have happen. My finger went woof and swelled right up. Got what we call a blood blister on the thing. And fortunately, I had the tapping formulas with me, and I tapped the formulas. I'd never done this with a bruise before that. I did it within 2 or 3 minutes of actually squeezing my finger. And within 10 minutes, that big blood blister went down to nothing, which was a very interesting thing to go. But I thought it was kind of fascinating because one of the things that Hawkins has talked about is that when we're in a particular level of consciousness, we're thinking certain thoughts, we actually create the events that go on in that particular level of consciousness. We attract to us, we draw to ourselves those events which are appropriate for that level of consciousness. And we did, at least I did, you know, yes. Pardon? Could you speak up a little bit? Could you speak up for everybody? Nobody can hear you, right?
Surround yourself with angels.
Right.
From the hammer going all the way up. When this happens and you do this to yourself, but the angel is not there to stop it from happening, you're supposed to protect them.
Who, the angels? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that we are at the physical level, we're at the material level. One of the things that Hawkins brings out in the Power versus Force is David Bohm's work, which I haven't covered or talked about at all. And Bohm is the quantum physicist who has concluded that reality, we have a physical reality that is here, and then there is another reality that is an energetic reality out of which the physical reality appears, and that energetic reality is controlled by our thoughts. And it is basically the same idea that Buddha had 2,500 years ago, because what Buddha stated was that physical reality turns up out of a matter stream that is influenced by consciousness. Bink. He was right, you know. I guess that's what enlightenment does for you, you know. Now, other things that we find at that 50 level are fungal and yeast infections. That's an interesting one. Another one, which is, yep, absolutely. 50, all right, has to do with feeling condemned or hopeless. Another thing an interesting one that turned up was menopause.
Under 50?
50 level disorder, all right? Now, but there's a karmic element to it, which is interesting. Pardon? Yeah, it's a level of being condemned, feeling condemned, condemning others, or feeling hopeless.
Did you say there's a karmic level to menopause?
Yes, which is why every woman gets it.
Don't even go there.
Great. Now, interestingly, we have developed a formula to counter menopause, and I only know of one woman who has used it, and she actually got her menopause to go away. She lost her period, was gone for about 2 years. She started the formula, her period came back, and it was like, right. That was my question: was why are you doing that? Right. To each his own. You know?
We got this and we got this. I don't want either one of them.
Right. Now, at the level of grief, interesting thing we found is that all of the allergies come in at the level of grief. That is, eye allergies, nasal allergies, skin allergies, all the food allergies come in at the 30 level. Fortunately, we've been able to come up with formulas that treat all of those particular kind of things. And we've also found that arterial sclerosis, one of the things that comes in at the level of grief, all forms of back pain, right? It's a special kind of thing, though. It's disdain. It is always the energy of disdain that is involved in back pain. It's when you find people a pain in the neck or a pain in the butt, okay? And quite literally, that's one of the few things that we found that the metaphor actually fits. And it's worked its way into common language because it's so apt, you know? It is not something that someone had to, you know, to generate in a book.
All things that are something.
Pardon? All of the back pain. Disdain. D-I-S-D-A-I-N, that's right. It is looking down on someone and thinking they're a pain in the butt. Life would be better without them, okay? Life would be better if they were different.
So if you think somebody's a pain in the butt, you get a pain in the butt.
You open yourself up to that. I didn't say you get it. It's very important to get the distinction. These do not create illness. They open the body to illness, all right? If you think of illnesses as coming in different peach baskets, okay? And this peach basket's got all the 20 level ones, and that one's got all the 30 level ones. When you think thoughts that are at that level, you open yourself to the disorders that come at that level. All right?
Are you saying disdain's at 30?
No, disdain is at 75, okay? So that's why I was moving up, right? We went from 50 to 75, okay?
Getting better.
Right? One of the things we also found that cancer comes in at the level of 75 level. It is a life view disorder. And it's a very, very interesting thing. Cancer is a life view disorder that comes out of the belief that life is unfair. All right? And we've done this with a number of different cancer patients. We check them out from 7 ways from Sunday, and every one of them we find out there is always this element that life is unfair that sits in there. Why? That's just the way it is. Yes?
overall with children when they show up with like asthma or cancer or stuff like that? How do you explain those?
Well, I know a 3-year-old who has asthma, and I've watched him grow and develop. And it's been very, very fascinating to watch him because as he has been going through the narcissistic phase, which is the 2 to 3-year-old phase, when he didn't get what he wanted, people were mean. They were cruel. And he would say, "Why are you so mean to me?" Okay. Oh, well, if that is the energy that opens you up to it, then all little kids have that potential of being there, especially since every little kid goes through the narcissistic stage. Not every one of them goes heavily into it and comes out with that strong disappointment of not getting what they want and then calling you mean and viewing you as mean. But from the time you're 2 or 3 on, you start to have those kinds of thoughts about things, and then you suddenly open yourself up to them. So if you go and check a little child who has that, find out what they say. All right? It was interesting because I do a lot of lecturing in Central Europe and in Hungary in particular. And I told the Hungarians about the relationship of the tragedy to cancer. And there was a girl who was a 9-year-old girl who had a form of skull cancer. And she refused different treatments of different sorts. She was a twin. A fraternal twin. She had a brother, so a boy and a girl that were born at the same time. And she thought that her brother was the favored child, and that this was terribly unfair. And as the person worked along with the girl, she actually got thrown out of school because she thought school was unfair. And she had a very strong, we haven't gotten her cancer under control. If you don't get the belief structure under control, it's very likely that it will come back. Right? Again, we have here in the United States, we have the highest cancer rates of anywhere in the world. We link it to cigarette smoking. We link it to pollutants of all different sorts. Hawkins has stated, cancer doesn't come out of cigarette smoking. Right? It's the belief system, and it is the belief system that turns out to be life is unfair, and out of that particular belief system you generate the energies that open you up to cancer. You go to other countries and you find in Korea, and there are a lot of people in Korea who use attractor field techniques. They have an epidemic in Southeast Asia of lupus. Well, lupus comes at a different level of consciousness. Lupus is something that occurs at the 125 level, at the level of desire. And these people are the worker bees of the world. They want, and they feel denied, and they live in the level of a 125. And out of that, they wind up with a particular set of disorders that we don't get. They have an epidemic of it over there in comparison to what we have here. Now, as it turns out, the most common level of consciousness in the United States is the 100 level. And that is also the level at which we have found the greatest number of physical disorders, not just here, but throughout the world. Arthritis is something that comes in at the 100 level. And it's a particularly interesting thing because arthritis, be it rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis, has to do with beliefs about punitiveness. It is a God view disorder. And people who think other people should be punished, who deserve to be punished, that sits somewhere in the background where that punishment is a warranted and a good thing, or this is what it should be, this is the way the universe is, the universe will punish you. They tend to develop arthritis. And I had a priest who uses this, who works in New Jersey. He found the stuff on the internet. I got to talk to him on the phone after he'd been using it for several years, just picking up what's on the internet and using it with his patients. And he said that the most dramatic patient that he had with him was a woman who came in who was crippled with arthritis and in a wheelchair, had been in a wheelchair for years. And he sat and tapped her, and he spent about a half an hour tapping her over and over and over again. And she got up and got out of her wheelchair, and she started to walk around. And then she started to talk about her mother, who she really wanted to punish and wanted to get back. And she went, and all of her pain came back again. Just like the woman with asthma. You tune into the right thoughts and you bring the stuff back. You bring the energy field back to yourself. Yeah.
Are we going to be able to work on tonight today, or are you going to?
Yes. Okay. We've got hours to go. Yeah. Yeah. What, you want to take a break now? All right. Now I'll take a minute to finish out what I was going through, listing some of the physical problems that you find at each one of these levels of consciousness. The full listing of all of this stuff is part of the training manual that I hand out as part of our basic training series. We offer 3-level trainings, three 3-day trainings that cover all of the different aspects of the attractor field techniques. And someone asked me about it. The next training is in LA, October 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Any long distance? Is it all?
It's all they've got to come, because there's a lot of interactive work that goes on with it. Everybody gets worked on. They're small classes, never more than 10 people in a class, and it's pretty intensive work, because there are always 2 or 3 trainers that are involved in there. So a lot of individual work. Pardon?
In LA?
Yes.
October
1, 2, 3. Right.
Is it on the internet, the information about that?
Pardon?
Is it on the internet?
Yes, there is. It is listed on the internet. Go to. Right. You go to there's a series of buttons when you first enter the site, and there's one about trainings and next training, and you hit that button and it'll take you into where the trainings are. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, as I mentioned, arthritis was one of the disorders that falls in at the 100 level. A lot of lung disorders like bronchitis and pneumonia and the common cold are things that come in at the 100 level. The joint pains, most eyesight problems turn out to be 100 level kinds of problems. Most GI upsets, from nausea and heartburn and headaches and diarrhea and constipation, are things that are 100 level disorders.
Could you put that? Yeah, can you turn that projector back on?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
The book you're looking at, is that something you developed?
Pardon?
Is that something you developed?
Yeah, this is one of my training manuals.
Gotcha.
Okay. No, you can't get this. You can't get the training manual on the internet. No, I give all the formulas away on the internet, but you don't. Whoops. That'll come on in a minute. All right. So the 100 level is the level of fear. All right. That's what the 100 level is, and it is the God view at that level, or the view of authority. And the best way to think of the God view is it's your view of authority. It is also your judgment position. When you are judging, you tend to come from that particular position. That's what the God view is about. When you're playing God and being judgmental, this is where you're coming from. All right? But then there is a life view that goes along with that, and if God is this punitive thing, then there are lots of opportunities to make mistakes, and he'll get you, in some way, shape, or form, and punish you for them, and so life becomes a frightening place, and we feel anxious, and we withdraw from it. And those are the things that go along at the level of fear. And that is, we find the judgments are punitive, that life is frightening, we feel anxious, and we withdraw. There are 2 major patterns that people have in life, and they're very difficult to at sometimes just watching a person to figure out what they're doing. We call them psychologically move toward patterns and move away from patterns. And a move toward pattern is something where you're going after a goal of some sort. A move away from pattern is you're running away from the thing behind you. And it's hard to tell, looking at someone, what it is that they're doing. Or even in their own mind, they will distort it in some way and say, well, I'm really going over here because this is what I want, when really what they're doing is they're avoiding something back there that they're afraid of. All right? And I had one experience. I've had a couple of experiences in my life that are not things that you really want to have. One of them was hitting a pedestrian. I didn't like that at all. He ran into the side of my car. I ran across 2 lanes of traffic trying to get away from him. I cut a trolley off. He still ran into the side of my car, broke both of his legs, hit his head on my windshield. I thought I killed the guy. It was a very freaky experience. I didn't get a ticket. I got absolutely nothing. He got a ticket. And the cop's reaction was, I don't know what he was running from, but whatever it was behind him was a lot more important than what was in front of him. There's a good example of somebody running in fear, not caring quite where they were going, just trying to get away from something, and that's a major withdrawal pattern. Now, at that 100 level, as I say, there are many, many things that we find that are at that level. All joint pain turns out to be things that come up at the 100 level, unless it's an arthritic pain, but that's still at the 100 level, which is an interesting kind of thing. We found that both over and underactive bladder, okay, whether you can't go to the bathroom or you go too frequently, and we understand that going too frequently, people who are frightened, you hold a gun to somebody's head and they wet their pants is basically what they do. They lose it. But we never realized that an inability to urinate was something that also turns up to be at that particular level. And I've run into some patients that had that from childhood, and they were frightened people, and that's exactly what was going on. ADD, attention deficit disorder, and the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also disorders that come in at the 100 level. These things are all about fear on one level of fun, and it scrambles the mind. You become frightened enough and you can't think. And that's what we find with these kids who have ADD. Underneath it, what you've got is a very, very, very frightened person. Now, dry eye syndrome, Lyme disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, mononucleosis, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, all of these things are coming at the 100 level. TMJ is a really great formula we have for TMJ, works like a champ. It's another disorder that comes in at the 100 level. Parkinson's disease, something that comes in at the 100 level. Tremors of all different sorts are 100 level things. That makes some kind of sense that you're shaking like a leaf, right? The shingles or herpes zoster is another 100 level disorder. Sinusitis is a 100 level disorder. Acne, dry skin, eczema, oily skin, all of these skin disorders are 100 level kinds of problems. Weight difficulties turn out to be a 100 level problem. And weight difficulties are an interesting thing because they have something to do with a difficulty with intimacy, a not wanting to get close, an afraidness about getting close. And I had a woman that I worked with for about 2 years who was the head of Weight Watchers in the state of New Jersey. She was the president of Weight Watchers in the state of New Jersey, had been for about 15 years. She had kept her weight absolutely on a line from her mid-20s. She was fat as a teenager, got rid of it by dieting and got into Weight Watchers, got absolute control of it, maintained control of it for about 15 years. Her husband started to play around on her. She kept weighing her food. She weighed everything that she ate for this 15 years. She didn't change anything. She gained 15 pounds. Okay? So we talk about the physical being the cause for things. Doesn't necessarily seem to, okay? But always that's the thing that we find under there. There's a part of us that's afraid to get close. Did she leave her husband? No. But did she trust him anymore? Nope, she didn't trust him anymore. And so out of this trust problem, she had these intimacy difficulties. On came the weight. Pardon? Actually, she's one of the ones who wound up using a CD, and she has to keep playing the CD. And I've got a CD that for weight control that not only there's a formula on the internet for obesity, but I've added to the CD formulas that block the body's absorption of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, right? Because I told you I used the reverse of what I did for the pigs. I used the knowledge that I got from the pigs to be able to figure out how I could do it the other way around and block those things so that we don't have the same uptake. And there are other formulas on there that reduce cravings for a lot of things like peanut butters and carbohydrates and fatty foods and things of that nature. So that you find that you don't want the things anymore. And what you do eat, you don't absorb as much of. And so people lose weight very, very nicely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Several of these illnesses, diseases, different things are at the same rate.
At the same level, right.
At the same level. So how come they can't all be tapped the same way?
You can tap the level of consciousness sits behind it, but one of the things that we found is that the consciousness creates a context in which this energetic disturbance is created within the body. The particular pattern that goes along with that disturbance is different than other disturbances at that same level. They are spawned by the same problem, but it's kind of like two different tornadoes. Okay? The energy field that goes along with the tornado, you can't tell exactly what's going to turn up, where the tornado is going to be, or exactly what kind of or intensity of tornado or bad weather you're going to have if you've got a low pressure zone. You just know if you've got a low pressure zone, you're going to get some kind of nasty disorder out of it. All right? And that's what we found is, that's all part of what Hawkins said, is that each physical disorder has its own kind of energetic pattern that goes along with it. And you've got to deal with that particular energetic pattern to get rid of the problem.
And how did you come to the tapping process for each individual thing?
That was part of that. I can only, as a scientist, I'm reluctant to use the term channeling, but the stuff that originally occurred when I got the formulas. I was telling Regina that when it all came together for me, I sat down at a typewriter and I started to type, and I typed out the introduction and the first couple of pages of the website as it sits right at the moment. I don't type, okay? And I just sat down and typed it out. And then I sat back and said, damn, that's interesting. Look at it. And it started from there. And as I said, it was a flood of things that just kind of came into my mind, which I have learned since the earliest time to verify everything kinesiologically. So it's all verified kinesiologically, and I verify it with others, and I have others blindly verify the formulas themselves.
And you mentioned that you've tested several of these things and had really good results. Have all of these been tested or not?
No, I said, well, if I said I tested some of them, does it imply I didn't tested all of them? No, I clearly did not test all of them. However, what I've learned is that every one of them works. All right? They all come out the same way. They're all these perfect little black marbles. And every marble I take and I pick up and I shoot runs perfectly true and perfectly straight. And I haven't found one yet that didn't work, and so I have pretty good confidence. The ones that I haven't personally worked with, I get emails from people from all over the world. And I ask them to go out and rate on the site what it is that works. And what we found is that every formula that people have tried works. All right? So, no, I have not personally verified them all. Are they verified? Are they in use by people? Absolutely. That's why I keep them out there on the internet, because they work. And it's, that's where it is. Now, what do you think you might find at the level of desire, the 125 level? Would you believe all addictions come in at that level? Right? But there are other interesting things, and somebody asked me about fetal alcohol syndrome. Yes, we do have a formula for fetal alcohol syndrome too. All right? Autism is a thing that comes in at the 125 level. Autism. Why? As I say, I haven't figured out a logic that goes with it. It's just that's where those things calibrate. Lupus, I mentioned that earlier. Systemic lupus comes there. Malaria, for whatever reason, is at that level. Tinnitus, and I did do a study. I haven't done that one at this point in time. We've done a study on patients with tinnitus. It was only about 20 patients. 60% of them within a month were completely free of their tinnitus, which is not bad because there is no known treatment at all for tinnitus. So to get 60% of them to get rid of their problem in a month was pretty good. And I had one woman, it was very interesting, a black woman who was referred into me with tinnitus. And I asked her about what, because it's all about feeling denied in some way, shape, or form, which is the God view. Right? She said absolutely, she was not denied anything. She happened to be, her husband was owned a construction company. She walked in furs and jewels, and she was driving a Jaguar. This woman was not missing anything. Very interesting. I talked to her about her upbringing, and her mother was an alcoholic. She's coming out of that 125 energy pool, and she said that the thing that bothered her about her relationship with her mother, and the reason she would never drink herself and had never been a drinker, was that her mother was so unavailable when she was growing up. She was out either drinking, or when she was home she was drunk, and even if she wasn't drunk she would never spend any time with her, and she really felt like that was just a dreadful thing, that her mother basically denied her companionship as a child. Well, as I say, I couldn't seem to come up with anything with her. She was not amenable to doing any kinesiologic testing, so I was about ready to say, well, just take a CD and see what happens, when she asked me if I did any marital counseling. I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I started off in the field in marital counseling, but I don't do a whole lot of it at this point in time. And I said, well, why are you interested? She said, well, my husband, I'm ready to leave him because he never talks to me. And I went, oh, but there's nothing in your life that you're denied. It was exactly the same thing she was denied with her mother, and she just never saw it, is basically what it was. So we started to be able to work from that particular thing. Why is it at that level? Why does denial come in? I don't know. I had one other person who really struck me, because he's the only person who has ever come in and talked to me about craving. And he was a priest who had tinnitus, and he again was referred in by the local ENT. And he said his tinnitus began about 10 years earlier when his mother died, and he said, I craved her and her companionship so much. And it was, as I say, the only person I ever talked to who sat down and started talking to me about craving. It was like it was walked right off of a book. But he was feeling denied. He was feeling terribly denied the presence of his mother. And God had done it, had taken his mother, is basically what it was. And what he wound up with was tinnitus. He opened the door and it walked in. Now, if we move up a little bit higher, we move up to the 150 level, up to the anger level. Again, we find some funny things. It's a very, very funny one that's in there. We have a formula for flatulence. Farting, okay? Stops it like that. In the middle, it stops it. You tap this formula, which is kind of a cute one. But it's all about feeling that life is antagonistic. And when you're feeling antagonized, that's one of the things that can come popping up. It's a very, very funny one. I've had a couple of patients in my practice, okay, who were gross is the only way to describe them, and I was real glad to give them a CD to take home. But other things we find at that particular level, and there's a good one for you, again, because we look to the physical world and we say the cause of flatulence is the decay of organic matter in our bowels. That's what flatulence is all about. If that's the case, how can we stop it with a little energetic tapping? How do you stop it dead in its tracks? Just poof, just like that. It's an interesting one. Also at that 100 level is gastritis. All right? The nasty GI upset. Heart attacks come in at that level. Sickle cell anemia, which is kind of an interesting thing. Reflex sympathetic dystrophy, cystic fibrosis. These are all things that fall in at that 100 level.
What was that other one?
Reflex sympathetic dystrophy. It is a localized constriction of the blood vessels and disruption of the nerves that usually comes after an injury. It happens in ankles and wrists and things of that nature, where people will injure them, and it'll swell up and get red and hurts like bejesus. And there are a couple of components that are tied up with it because the skin turns absolutely blue, even though it is kind of puffed up, and it is because there is a constriction, a real strong constriction of the blood vessels. Similar thing that goes along in headaches. migraine headaches. The migraine headaches, the vascular component of migraine headaches is the pounding, because the blood vessels have gone first into a heavy constriction, and then they expand, and then every time because they're dilated, every time the heart beats, it goes poof, poof, poof on this vessel that's been upset. And that's where the pain comes from, the pounding pain that goes with migraines. No, the migraines, that's a funny part. See, there's two different components in there. The vasculitis that underlies it is a 50 level disorder. But and migraine headaches have a component that is a 50 level component, and actually it's 100 level. The RSD is 150 and 50. So there's a hopelessness in there, and a feeling somehow aggression, or feeling vengeful. You want to get somebody back, and just a mix of those two particular energies. It's like the bipolar is a mix of 30 level energy at the one level, which is the low level of the bipolar, and 175 level, which is pride, because that's what happens when bipolars go off. They think they're kings of the universe. They're going to go fly out windows. They're going to do all kinds of things. So it's a disorder that has the two poles, and the two poles are represented by two different energy fields that are part of the same thing. And then finally we move up to the last level at which we find physical disorders coming up. That's the level of pride. And what we find is that Alzheimer's disease is a disorder that occurs only at this pride level. And if you stand back and you look at Ronnie Reagan, he was a really proud dude, and indifferent on a lot of levels to a bunch of things in the world. As much as he attributed things to God, and he was apparently a church-going guy, his policies in the world were policies in which he was going to do what he was going to do. He was going to grind the Soviet Union into the ground. He was going to outspend them, and he was going to do this, and he did what he wanted to do. And I don't care what anybody else says. That's indifference. That's the essence of indifference. I don't care what they want. Doesn't matter. You know, I know best. You know. We find other things like endometriosis turn up at the pride level. All right? Certain kinds of visual things turn up there. Cataracts. It's not cataracts. They are glaucoma. All right? Glaucoma occurs at the 175 level. Heat exhaustion occurs at the 175 level. And we found that there are two different kinds of voice loss problems. One, a hoarseness that occurs at the 100 level that has to do with fear, and one at the 175 level. Why, we don't know, but there are different formulas, and some people respond to one and some people respond to the other. You know? So that's a quick rundown of the particular what happens. All right? As I say, out of the 500 disorders, I covered maybe 100 that I ran off. I was just running quickly through the list of real common kinds of things. And I think what would be nice for us to do is to perhaps get a little experience of the use of a CD. All right? As I say, there are catalogs sitting over there in order forms, and there is a special pricing for people who are at the conference. If you order your CDs today, and I take the order home with me, the price is down to from $150 down to $100 a piece, and there's free shipping that goes along with it. Okay, typically our CDs are $150. You call and order them. If you order one through the phone or you fax the order, and that's what it'll cost. If you buy it here at the conference, you get a break. Okay. Now, each antenna comes with its, or each CD comes with its own antenna. Yeah. Pardon? Well, a CD will play on either one, so it doesn't matter. Right. Right. Yes.
Now you mentioned you just put the CD in a personal CD player.
That's right.
And the antennas in the headphone jack.
That's right.
So you recommend not using headphones?
That's right. You don't have to listen to it at all. It's very unpleasant to listen to. These are not musical tones that are going to sit there and lull you to sleep. This is beep 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 beep. Burp, burp, burp. These are things that stimulate meridians.
CD player?
Pardon? Yes, you can play it on a CD player, you can play it in a little portable player, you can put it on a carousel player. If you put it in a carousel player, you have to get an adapter to make the little 1/4-inch plug go into the big plug that goes on a carousel player. Okay, that's the only difference that you do. About $3 for one of these, adapters in Radio Shack.
So you play it with no sound. You turn the sound
That's right. You turn the sound all the way up. The instructions, yes, the instructions that come with, there are instructions that come with the CD that tell you how to do it. I just simply say, follow the instructions, they're really simple. You put it on, you turn it on, you turn on your CD player to repeat continuously. Turn the volume all the way up and forget it. That's right, that's right.
How many CDs?
How many CDs are there?
Right.
Well, look in the catalog, there are about 40 of them. All right? They cover all kinds of distance.
Individual antenna. So if I order
No,
30 CDs,
no,
I get 30
no.
antennas.
Each CD comes with an antenna. The frequencies are the same no matter which ones. It's the order and the combination of them. It's like different tapping sequences, except they're different sequences of frequencies. So, but if you order 5 CDs, you'll get 5 CDs and 5 antennas, and any antenna will work with any CD.
So what
Okay.
would we order today?
Oh, we take it?
Right, you can order those. I mean, there are catalogs and lists that I recommend that you go look in the catalog and take a look and see what it is that you're interested in. And there's an order form at the back of each one of those catalogs, and fill it out, and
So each CD is a different level that's showing here.
No, each CD is not specific to a level. Each CD covers particular kinds of disorders. Okay, so there is a disorder for skin problems. Okay, actually there's an extra CD that's not in there, but if you go into the CD for skin disorders, it'll handle dry skin, it'll handle oily skin, it'll handle acne, it'll handle a number of different kinds of skin conditions. There's a respiratory disorder that handles colds and flu and asthma and a whole bunch of things like that. There's a CD for low back pains, for cervical and thoracic pain, and another CD for lumbar and sacral, because there's so many formulas that are involved, and they take long enough that we need 2 separate CDs to get those. Yeah.
Do you have one on depression?
Yes, there are a whole psychological series there, cover depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety conditions. As I say, there's a whole series of right.
So, but are those each separate CDs?
Right, they're all separate CDs. Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, there are 2 CDs that have to do with that. One of them is called the Basic Treatment CD. It's number 5 on that particular list, and that has on it all of the formulas to clear the karmic energies, the process, emotion, life view, and God view energies for a particular level. And you can, if you want to tap some formulas and just use the Basic Treatment CD to start off with, you can, if the disorder that you want to tap is at 75 level, you play the specific track and they're all labeled as to what it is for the 75 level. Then you don't have to tap the 75 level stuff, you just go tap whatever the physical disorder is that you're working with. So that's why we call it the Basic Treatment CD, because it gives you the basics of what you need no matter what the problem is, right? But if you play this on a continuous basis, it does clear out the energies very nicely that go along with these particular things. Then there is a second CD that goes from 310 up through the 700 level, all right?
And that's a set.
No, there's 2 separate CDs. 2 separate CDs.
From 310 to up, that's 2 CDs.
No, it's 1 CD. That's right. It's number 15, I think, on that list, if you look. Yes.
Okay, so if I got the one for my son, it says that it should be 24 hours, but that's not one that pertains to me. So if I get one that pertains to me, so we have both of them going and...
Well, what I would do is to get a carousel player and play one after the other. Okay, I'm not sure what disorder your son has.
He has epilepsy and he's mentally challenged.
Okay, yeah. I would let that run for about a month all by itself for him.
Right, so, but then for me, when I'm listening to mine, are they competing, are they...
Yeah, they would be competing. You don't run, again, the instructions that come with it are pretty specific and say, don't run 2 exactly the same time, because the meridian doesn't know what's stimulating it at that point in time. It will confuse things, and so you won't treat yourself adequately. So we recommend that you get a carousel player. They're not very expensive. And then you can play one after the other, and just put them on and let them run 24 hours that way. Right.
And so then for these, like how long, like for the backache pain, I mean like how many days do you recommend, or you just keep going until your back doesn't hurt?
Usually it's until your back doesn't hurt, and we find that it's rarely more than a few weeks. You know, very rarely more than a few weeks. Right? And if your son is at school, does he go to school or not?
He goes to work, yeah.
You know, he goes to work. Well, when he's not home, you play your CD. When he is home, you put his CD on. You can do it that way too. That's just another way of doing it, right? You know, it's just a matter of budgeting your time. Yes.
Do they have to be real loud, like you're working for the
Well, you never hear them. When you put the antenna in, okay, when you put the antenna into the headphone jack, it stops the sound. We recommend you turn the volume all the way up, which will put it will act like it's putting out, it puts out the greatest amount of energy that is possible from your unit, but you don't hear a thing, ever. Never, never, never. Right. Yes, Mary.
You listen to radio on top of that, or you're talking about
You can, doesn't make any, there's no known energy that we have found that conflicts with it, except itself. All right, so you just don't want to play two CDs, right? Right. It is. Does a radio interfere with the TV? No. Well, neither a radio nor a TV interfere with this, nor the radio or the telephone or anything else. It's a very, very different series of frequencies.
Can we ask you things afterwards to help us decide which
Sure.
one would be best for us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Any more questions about the CDs?
The CD for the next time your back hurts again?
Right, that's right. You know, you can keep it. And, one of the things that I have found, that I mentioned that I've made some changes in the CDs that increases their effectiveness rather dramatically. And it has to do with a recent finding that came out of something that I was doing with the tapping. For the last 30 years, I've had a bad shoulder, something I injured in high school and college football, and never got fixed. And if I would sleep on my arm the wrong way, or lean on a sofa, or strain the arm, and I'm a bowler, I love to bowl, my arm would start to ache, my shoulder would just start to ache. It would loose. You could feel it move around inside the socket, and for whatever reason, I was led in the spring to not just tap the normal number of times. And as you'll find out if you download the information from the internet, I recommend that you tap under the nose and the lower lip, those two positions 5 times, the back of the hand 75 times, and all of the other points you tap 20 times. That's what the recommendation on the internet says, and that little booklet that I was showing around that shows all of the formulas. What I found is that if you tap 10 times for each of these, 150 times, and 40 times for all of the other points, you increase the effectiveness by about a factor of 10. If you triple it, so you tap 15 times under the nose and the lower lip, 225 times in the back of the hand, and 60 times on every other point, you increase the effectiveness by a factor of over 50. I did that on my shoulder, and I haven't had any problem with it. I forgot that I have a bad shoulder. It's just, the problem is gone. It just left. It was that much more effective. And that led me to then do a bunch of investigations and try it on other people just to make sure I wasn't crazy. And we found that it does work, and that's why we changed all of the CDs. We shifted over the CDs at the beginning of June, and there are slightly other. If you look at the formulas in the book, it recommends, especially for pain formulas, if you do the back pain formulas, when you do the formula to remove the symptoms, it says repeat up to 10 times. That's a lot of tapping. Except if you tap it, a double tap, that's like tapping it 10 times, which means that if you double or triple tap, you never have to repeat any of the lines. So you just take whatever it says on the internet, wherever it says repeat 2 times or repeat up to 10 times, just forget that. double or triple the number of taps that you use, and you'll find that it works very, very effective. We just haven't updated the site yet. There's just so many things that I'm into that I just don't have time to get out there and do all the little details in life. So we're going to go, and we're going to jump in, hopefully, to, let me see, you don't need this now. Actually, I'm going to go back to that. I'll leave that on for you people.
Another question.
Yeah.
What about, what you're talking about?
Just plain one for general classroom.
For a classroom?
Something like this. Oh, I've got a classroom where everybody's trying to learn English.
Mm-hmm.
And so is there a mental stimulation that would help us? Because when kids come in and they speak a different language, there's a lot of stress involved.
Mm-hmm.
And
Probably a lot of anxiety, I would expect. All right? Yes, that would be what I would anticipate. Would you, feelings of maybe I'm not good enough, and anxiety that would come up for kids.
so is it the mental threatening one or one of the learning disability ones?
Actually, I think probably the most likely one would be the level of consciousness CD number 5, because it hits such a broad range of things. And it goes after the underlying kind of emotional basis of it, as opposed to, say, there's a specific disorder that they have. I don't know if it's a specific disorder. They're just feeling anxious, you know, is basically what it is. New surroundings, new situation, and learning something unfamiliar. So I would say that would probably be the best one. The woman that I've worked with on learning disabilities, and she works on a broad range of learning disabilities, she uses the ADD CD that they take home, or the learning disability CD. There's one for both, depending on what their condition is. And when she has them in the office, because she'll bring them in the office for a couple times, she uses the basic treatment CD with affirmations, and she has them go through and do some forgiveness stuff, which we're going to go into now.
Do you have a CD going now?
No. No. I will be shortly, though. Okay. All right. Okay. Now we turn that off, and I will jump over in here. So I'm going to play it out of my computer rather than putting a CD on, because I don't have a CD player with me, so I can do it either way. Yes.
I'm sorry, did you mention you can play it at night when you're sleeping?
Yes, you can. Okay. Yeah, there's a great sleep disorder CD that people really, okay, they really like that one. That one really does lots of good things for people. Okay. All right. Now, pardon? Yeah.
You said you had 2 different sizes of antennas?
No, there's only one for sale. Okay, one, it handles 40 feet in every direction, up, down, sideways. You know, so it's a 40-foot radius.
Some people live below you?
People who live below you, the people who live above you, people who live on both sides of you. You know, you're doing the world a favor, right?
Yeah, go to work and play in your office. Oh, your boss.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Right.
Boss is off. You don't know what it is.
That's kind of scary to treat people without them knowing it.
Well, it's an interesting kind of thing. Do you pray for people without them knowing it? Would you stop praying for them because you're intervening in their free will?
Yeah, okay.
Oh no! Well, you got the same thing with this. Okay.
Okay, so my next question is why $100?
Well, if you went through the development that this stuff went through.
Why not 200? Why not 300? Why?
I did a whole bunch of calibration on it, and I came up with $150 because it is the average price for a physician's single visit. Okay. And so I just gauged it as a single physician's visit, but you get it forever, right? So it turns out to be quite a bargain, but that's why.
I'm always curious though.
Yeah. Right, yeah. I calibrated on it because I had no idea.
Because the logical, of course,
Great. All right.
Does one CD play for hours?
You can, or you can put on, if you get one of the carousel players, you can put 5 on and you can have them rotate. Okay? No.
How long does one CD play?
Anywhere from 60 to 80 minutes. The most you can get on a CD is 80 minutes worth of stuff. So the most it would be 80 minutes long. The shortest it would be somewhere around 50 or 60. Although I have a CD for amyloidosis, which is something you had never heard of, which the body picks up amyloid. It's a funny, weird kind of disorder that's only 27 minutes long, you know, but that's all it needs. Pardon? For a lot of these disorders, it takes time for stuff to change, okay? Some of them you play them more than once a day. Some of them, they all have instructions that come with them, and they, you know, printed right on the CD because people lose printed instructions, so there are instructions printed on them. So this is what's on the tracks, and play it this way, you know. Okay, we try and make it as simple as possible for people. All right. Now, as I mentioned, one of the things that we have found scientifically is that hello. Yep. One of the things that we've found scientifically is that our thoughts and memories are the things that generate the energy that create problems for us. And thoughts and energy, the thoughts that we think are clearly things that are built up on our values and our beliefs, and we're accumulating them all the time. We start as little kids. You know, someone asked me about the problem with diabetes in a 3-year-old. Why would a 3-year-old have diabetes? Well, as I mentioned, at 3 you're already forming beliefs about how the world is. By the time you're 2, you're forming beliefs. The ultimate goal, and it's really kind of cute, is to reach a state that was advocated by Christ. And what Christ said is that to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to be born again. Well, what do you mean by that? You know, if you take a look at the born-again Christian movement, you find the most judgmental group of people in the whole world, okay? I mean, if anybody in the world has missed the boat on what Jesus is talking about, it is that particular group. To be born again, as it turns out, and again, I've done some nice calibration on that, is to look at life like a little child before you reach those judgments, where you just accept everything, and life is just wonderful. However it turns up, life is great. And that's what you find in really little kids. And then they go through the narcissistic stage and it starts to change. And denier comes in and they're supposed to be the center of the universe, and it goes on from there and goes downhill from there in a lot of levels for us. Yeah, the essence is to be born again, and that is to look at the world through that set of eyes where you just don't make judgments. Yeah? Now, not sure how I got off onto that, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, careful, you didn't go on the news.
Pardon?
Now, Harper's making comments about certain things.
What was the entertainment here? In Las Vegas, they made a comment about some political.
The neurostat.
Yeah, I was going to say, be careful.
You're safe.
Judgment.
Well, it may be, and you know, I guess that's the way it's going to be. There's no specific disrespect meant, but the basic bottom line is that, at least in my opinion, I think that they have missed the boat. You know, and certainly Christ's vision is not a vision that involves judgment.
They also have a lot of companies, so.
Pardon?
They have a lot of companies, not just.
Yes. All right. Now, yeah, the world is an interesting place. It is filled with obviously disrupted or negative views of life. You know, someone asked about why don't we send antennas and CDs over to Israel? You know, get something going over there because of the problems that they have. And on some levels, the Arabs and the Israelis are locked in a 30-level struggle. It's you hit me, I'll hit you. You hit me, I'll hit you. It is payback, 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 payback. And it's a never-ending struggle. It's really a shame. It's just a terrible thing, terrible cycle that they're locked into. It's not something that's going to be solved soon or easily, which is really a shame. Pardon?
We're going to tap?
No, we're not going to tap at all. Okay, what we're going to do is... Okay. All right. I've turned on what I call the affirmation sequence, which is a particular sequence that allows you to go and do forgiveness work without having to tap. And what I'm going to do is we're going to see if we can go through a little experience with you, and that's where I started, and then we kind of wandered off here somewhere. I'm going to ask you to go inside and find what for you was a really negative experience, something that happened in your past. It's important. In order to understand just about anything in life, we have to, in our mind, we have to make rapid comparisons of what's in front of us to what has been in the past. That's how we know things, through our memory. So, what is this that I have here? How do you know that?
Because you've experienced it.
That's right, you've seen a million of them, okay? And now the interesting thing is, whatever your history is, if someone had taken you and shoved this up against your nose, okay, and squished the water into you and almost drowned you, you'd have a pretty negative experience with this cup of water. And your experience when I held this cup up would be different, right? I had one woman, it was a very interesting case, who was terrified of wrought iron fences and wrought iron handrails. And you say, what in the world is so terrifying about wrought iron fences and handrails? Well, ultimately we got down to the fact that she came to the United States from Nazi Germany, and her mother was beaten to death by a soldier with a poker from a fire, right? You know? And so her history with the wrought iron was not a good history. And whenever she saw this stuff, that's the panic that came up inside her. So we know things through these very rapid things, even if we don't realize it, even if we don't remember it. That's what's going on inside there. That's how we know. And that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult for us to get out of the behavior loops that we're in. Because in order to take a step forward, in your mind you have to take a step backwards to figure out what it is, then take a step forward. Well, where do you wind up after you've taken your step backward, then a step forward in the same place you were in? So it's a difficult thing for us to get out of that particular pattern because we have all these historical things set back there, and unless we do something to help get rid of them or neutralize them, we keep running the same pattern over and over again, all at an unconscious level. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to go in and find an unpleasant memory. And what I found is that if I give that kind of a general thing, people will often go and find the worst thing that ever happened to them, and that's fine, you know. Go in and find whatever you consider to be a really negative event, one that made you just feel rotten, okay? Could you do that? Just want you to all take a moment and go in there and find it, because everybody's got them. Things that have happened, something that humiliated you or embarrassed you in childhood, and you say, oh, I've forgotten all about that, but if you go back to it, there's still a sense of humiliation or embarrassment. Go back and find it. Go back and find these negative things. It can be a loss, it can be anything you want. So I'm going to give you about a minute to go find something that you find is really negative. It can be someone who mistreated you as a child that you have negative feelings around. And the key is, for the moment, all right, I'm going to ask you to go after the feeling. Make sure when you go back to the event, there's still this yuck feeling in there. Does everybody have one? Is that a yes? Okay. Okay. Now, what I'm going to simply ask you to do, this is a much simpler procedure than moving your eyes around and all the other things. I simply want you to say, and I want you to say it out loud, well, let's see, what I'm going to have you say. I forgive myself on all levels, even though I have this feeling. Focus on the feeling, all right? Ready? I forgive myself on all levels, even though I have this feeling. All right, stop. Tune into the feeling. Close your eyes, tune into it. Don't stay out here. Out here is not important. What's going on inside you is the key. Say it again. I forgive myself on all levels, even though I have this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even though I have this feeling.
Sit with the feeling again. All right, who's got the phone? Thank you. Again, I forgive myself on all levels, even though I have this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even though I have this feeling.
Tune back into the feeling. I forgive myself on all levels, even though I still have this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even though I still have this feeling.
Stay with the feeling. Again, I forgive myself on all levels, even though I still have this feeling. It's important for you to close your eyes. There's a reason I asked you to do it, okay? One more time, I forgive myself on all levels, even though I still have this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even though I still have this feeling.
Now I forgive myself on all levels, even if I never stop having this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even though I never stop having this feeling.
Again.
I forgive myself on all levels, even though I never stop having this feeling.
One more time, I forgive myself on all levels, even if I never stop having this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even though I never stop having this feeling.
Okay. I hear some variations on there, so I will repeat it again. I forgive myself on all levels, even if I never stop having this feeling. Not even though I never, even if I never stop. Okay. One more time.
I forgive myself on all levels, even if I never stop having this feeling.
Okay. Now, if it's a feeling that occurred as a result of an interaction with other people, and lots of our feelings are, and the vast majority of our negative feelings are, then what I want you to do is I want you to say to that person, whoever it was, name them by name. I forgive you, Bob, I forgive you, Mom, I forgive you, Dad, whoever it happens to be, even though I hold you responsible for my feeling. Ready? I forgive you, whoever you are. Okay. One more time. I forgive you, X, even though I hold you responsible. I forgive you, X, even though I still hold you responsible for my having this feeling. One more time. And then finally, I forgive you, X, even if I never stop holding you responsible for my having this feeling. Again, I forgive you, X, even if I never stop holding you responsible for my having this feeling. Okay, now, come on outside. Well, now stay in there for a moment. Check your feeling. Check the level of intensity of the feeling. See how it's doing. How does it seem to be doing in there? Still some of it there? All right, so some of you still have some little pieces of it. Okay. Is there anyone that it didn't go down at all? Well, that's not bad. Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do next is there are certain kinds of blocks that we have inside, all right, to letting go of feelings. So just blindly, so normally I would kinesiologically check to see what the blocks are, and I just have you do that. But since it's a group, I'll just have you go through the whole thing, all right? First one, safety, all right? I want you to focus in on the feeling, safety, all right? And I want you to say, I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe it's unsafe to let go of this feeling. So tune into your feeling, all right? And then say, I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe it's unsafe to let go of this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe it's unsafe.
Again. One more time. Now I forgive myself on all levels, even if I never stop believing it's unsafe to let go of this feeling. Never stop believing it's unsafe. Okay. One more time. Now the next thing we find that blocks people is that they have something that they don't deserve to let go of the feeling in some way, shape, or form. So there's a not deservingness that gets in there. So let's go through that. I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe I don't deserve to let go of this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe I don't deserve to let go of this feeling.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Can you say it when you repeat it?
Okay. All right. Okay. It always starts off the same way. I forgive myself, even though. So we don't need the first half. I will make sure I repeat the second half. So, fine. I forgive myself on all levels, even if I never believe I deserve to let go of this feeling.
I forgive myself on all levels, even if I
Okay. Even if I never stop believing I deserve to let go of this feeling, okay? Even if I never stop believing I don't deserve to let go of it. Okay. And the final one that we have is a cute one, all right? So I haven't run across too many other people who approach it from this way, and that is, I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe I will lose my identity if I let go of this feeling. It's very funny how people identify with certain feelings. This is who I am. I feel these kinds of feelings. And so I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe I will lose my identity if I let go of this feeling. I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe I'll lose my identity if I... Again, I forgive myself on all levels, even if I believe I'll lose my identity if I let go of this feeling. Okay? And then finally, I forgive myself on all levels, even if I never stop believing I'll lose my identity if I let go of this feeling. I forgive myself on all levels, even if I never stop believing I'll lose my identity if I let go of the feeling. All right. All right. Too many words?
It's natural.
Your brain can't even think. You need to go into this thing in meditative, easy form, and we're just mumbling, we're too much in the left brain, trying to do it.
Right, you are too much in the left brain trying to go into the right brain. It's just
too many double negatives.
Yeah.
Now we have a guide. Guide us.
Well, it's interesting how the double negatives work out. They work out very well, as a matter of fact. Well, let me ask. Let me go back. We'll go back and we'll say, how many people still have their feeling where they started off having it?
It's worse.
Oh, you can't even remember the feeling anymore?
It got worse. Because you're so much like hypnotic. Just easy.
Yeah, well, I didn't. How many of you can't find the feeling? Are there any of you who can't find the feeling? Gone? Okay, there's another one who's gone. Okay.
That's good.
Who's gone? Okay. Some will even forget the event. All right. All right. So after you do it, you'll find out all these funny things happen. It's hard to do in a group demonstration like this. It is. I admit that it is a difficult thing to do. I did want you to give it a taste of what it is. It is a very simple procedure. It is forgiving yourself for having the feeling, forgiving yourself even though you still have the feeling, forgive yourself even if you never stop having the feeling. And you forgive them even though you hold them responsible, even though you still hold them responsible, even if you never stop. And if that doesn't get rid of it, you go after the blocks. You forgive yourself. Here's a cute one that you sometimes have to do. You forgive yourself for not being able to forgive. All right?
But we've all forgotten.
Right. Right. So is there anyone who is still in a state of distress over whatever it was that was the most distressing thing in their life? Because that's what I asked you to go after.
Were you playing a CD during that time?
Yes, I was playing the affirmation sequence. All right? So you don't have to tap.
So if you unplug that and turn up the volume, then we would hear what's actually in a sound.
I told you didn't want to hear it.
I just wanted to make sure there was really a sound.
That's right. Okay.
Just checking.
Right. Right. There's really something in there. There is a jack in the box, yes.
So does the CD come with that list of affirmations, or those affirmations are on the website?
The CD, the basic treatment CD comes with about a 14-page manual that steps you through it, okay, in very, very simple terms. But you've got it. I mean, you see how simple it is, all right?
All the CDs or just the basic CDs?
Some of them come with manuals, not all of them, though. Some of the disorders we found that, like cancer, in order to get rid of them, you've got to clear that energy field, and so they have the affirmation track on them. All right, so you just play it, and then the rest of the day you just play the rest of the tracks on there.
So,
yeah, that's okay.
so how does the sound of the tapping produce the same result as the physical act of?
Isn't that cool? Because the particular energy field that is created by it, the energy pulse, stimulates that same meridian as if that point was being tapped.
So it's still going here and here?
Kind of like that, but it's really hitting the whole meridian. It hits the whole body, but it causes that meridian to vibrate as if that spot. That's right. That's right. Anyone within 40, minimum of 40 feet. I mean that literally the minimum of 40 feet, okay? Well, that is a basic, yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Audio waves that out of our range of hearing?
Pardon?
Is it audio waves that out of our range of hearing?
No, all of the audio, all of these frequencies at the human level and at the animal level are within hearing range. Some of the bird frequencies and some of the plant frequencies are outside of the human range, but they're not pleasant frequencies to listen to. So you don't want to sit and listen to the CD. It's not melodic. It's not something that will, make you feel good to listen to it. As a matter of fact, you get very aggravated by listening to it. The waves that the energy, the waves that the antennas put out are a wave that was theoretically defined by Anatov, who was a Russian physicist, and Bohm back in the 20s. It's called the AB effect, and it is a thing called the probability wave, which is created when you apply voltage in the right way to a non-terminated field, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're a physicist, but it works. All right? So it creates a thing called a probability wave, which is something that is kind of like the energy of chi. The energy of chi we cannot measure directly. They've done some very high-tech ways of measuring what's going on and where the energy flows are, but they can't measure the energy of chi itself. They can measure an electromagnetic field around it, and so we know it's there. But this is in the same class of energies as what's going on inside chi, which is why it works pretty well. Right? Yes?
Is there any problems with all your family members hearing your tape?
Being exposed to the energy, no. If you don't have the field, it doesn't do anything to you. That's one of the real nice things. There's no way to overtreat yourself. There's no way to mistreat yourself. It's not like a pharmaceutical that you can take the wrong dose or you can take the wrong medication. It is clearing out an energy field, and if there's nothing there to clear out, it doesn't do anything. Right?
Does it work if you don't say anything?
It works to a lesser extent if you say it in your head, but you have to say it in your head. You have to say the words.
What if you don't know you're even having to play?
If you don't know it's playing?
Yeah, what if you do it to a patient?
Well, most that I've heard is that people mention that they have difficulty thinking of negative things if it's playing continuously, okay? Right? Which is a real terrible thing to have happen to you. But that's what people have told me. I've never tried it myself, so I don't know, you know.
So you don't want to put it on at night and go to sleep because then you're not thinking.
You're not thinking negative thoughts.
You're not thinking negative thoughts, but you're also not saying the affirmation.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Normally you wouldn't turn that track on at night. Although you can leave it on because some people will turn on the basic treatment CD when they go to sleep at night, and it includes those 2 tracks. But it's only 3 minutes out of the 70-minute or 80-minute tape. So you know, for 3 minutes you're not getting the level of consciousness formulas. The rest of the time you do. Yes.
The CDs tell you how long you need to play them?
Yeah, each one has instructions on it, and it'll say something like, you know, play for 4 to 6 weeks or until your symptoms are gone, and, you know, play it again if they come back, you know. I mean, they're pretty simple instructions. You know, pretty hard to harm yourself or to do it wrong is what we found, right? It's a very forgiving technique.
Your classes, so are your classes to teach people how to...
The classes are to teach you how to really do it well with other people. Right. Lots of examples, and always the classes are very experiential. As I said, they're small. Rarely do I get to allow a class to get more than 10 or 12 people in it because it's a very intensive thing. People come to these things to get fixed. Okay? Get that. I understand why people come to seminars. They come because they got something they want fixed. And that's part of what we do, is to work on that to make sure that they walk away fixed. Right.
So you're not necessarily working with healers that are going to work, you're working with people
Both.
who want to have a specific thing.
That's right. It can be both. We have both in the same time in the same class. You know, I don't discriminate. Even, you know, healers are people too, I found. You know, much maligned as they might be, people are healers, and they have their stuff too. Yes.
Planning on doing any trainings there in Las Vegas?
Not at the moment. I don't have any plans. I say that perhaps next year, and if you'd like, we could probably set something up. You know, if we get enough people, like that would be fun. I wouldn't mind doing. I'm not opposed to doing it. I just don't have any plans for it right at the moment. So I say the next training is in L.A. Actually, the next training, I've got a double training. I've got a level 1 and a level 2 in Hungary in the middle of September, and then I come back in October, and then I'm free until November, where I've got some more trainings then. And then I think December I'm back in Hungary, right? There's 450 for a 3-day class. Okay.
Where is the one in LA going to be held?
It's in Laurel Hill. It's in a private home in Laurel Hill. I think that's what it's called. I don't know. Lango Canyon, yeah, Laurel Canyon. Okay. What do I know? I don't live there. It's a place to me.
3 doctor visits.
Pardon?
The cost of 3 doctor visits.
That's right.
450, right?
That's right. That's right. It's you got 3 days?
You calibrated.
That's right. It's real simple, right? Keeps life simple sometimes. When you don't know what to do, you know, then you can fall back on calibration. I don't do that for everything in life. I wouldn't want to leave my life that way. But when I run into a quandary, I'll stand back and check it out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think if we're finished with questions, we are finished for today.
Thank you, sir.
You are more than welcome.